It's 12:13 p.m. You're scrolling apartment listings on your lunch break. $1,500 a month, one bedroom, in-unit laundry. You could actually see yourself there. So you book a viewing. The apartment's great. The leasing agent is friendly. You're already picturing where your futon goes. Then you get home, open a spreadsheet for the first time in your life, and the number stares back at you like a final exam you didn't study for. Only this exam costs rent and interest and your mental health. My name's Jack, and I used to think living alone at 23 is what making it looks like. Today, I'm going to show you the true cost of $1,500 rent alone on a $40K salary, and more importantly, exactly how much you really need to make it work, and the smarter play if you're not there yet. Because here's what most people your age assume. If you can pay the monthly rent, you can afford the apartment. Done. Landlord approves, you sign, move in. Easy. And honestly, the entire rental industry wants it that way. But run the full numbers, and way fewer people would say yes. They sign leases they can't afford because the alternative feels like admitting they haven't made it yet. But made it to what? A studio apartment and an empty savings account? Now here's what no one will tell you. The rent you see on the listing is only one part of what living alone actually costs. By the time you add everything else, the math is not what you pictured over your leftover lunch sandwich. Suddenly, your $1,500 rent is at a much higher number. Let's call it the true cost of living alone. And most people find out what it is about 3 months into the lease. And the worst part, you can't afford to break it. So let's actually slow this down and run the math properly. Take a $40K salary. That's roughly $2,600 hitting your account each month, not $3,300. That was before taxes. This is $2,600. That's your entire playing field. Everything in your life has to fit inside that number. Now start with the $1,500 rent, the number that got you in the door. The moment you sign, that number starts creeping up. Utilities come in at around $150 a month on average. Nothing crazy, just electricity, water, maybe gas, but it's there every single month whether you think about it or not. Internet adds another $60 because apparently basic human necessity is still not included in rent anywhere. Renter's insurance, which nobody remembers until they're forced to, that's another $20. And parking. If you have a car, you're realistically adding somewhere between $75 and $100. Let's just call it $75 to stay conservative. So before you've bought a single grocery, that $1,500 apartment quietly becomes about $1,800. And notice how none of that felt optional. That's the key. This isn't lifestyle spending. This is just the cost of existing in that space. Now bring it back to your $2,600. The moment $1,800 leaves your account, you're sitting on about $800 for the rest of your life that month. And this is where most people go, okay, $800. I can make that work. Right, let's keep going. Groceries alone, even if you're trying, you're at about $300 minimum. That's not luxury, that's just food. Phone bill, around $80. Transportation, gas, insurance, maybe a car payment, or even public transit, you're easily looking at another $300 without doing anything crazy. So now you've burned through about $680 of that $800, just staying functional, which leaves you with around $120 for the entire month. That's your entire margin. That's the whole game. And this is where it gets real. That $120 isn't extra. That's everything you didn't plan for. That's the doctor visit you forgot about. That's saying yes to dinner once. That's a random delivery night when you're too tired to cook. Or that random $50 that disappears on a fun week. Yeah, that same $50. The mocha latte, the I deserve this purchase, the game skin, the Uber instead of walking. That little invisible habit that never feels like a big deal until you realize it's your entire margin. That $50 isn't random anymore. That's almost half your remaining money. And now ask yourself, where does saving fit into this? Emergency fund? Roth IRA? Anything for your future at all? Nada. Zip. Zero. Not because you're irresponsible, not because you need more discipline, because the math was never built to support it. And here's what people don't see coming. This isn't just tight, this is fragile. Imagine just one thing going wrong. Car needs brakes, laptop dies,
Your pet decides today is the day to become a financial liability. That's it. That's the month. One of those hits, and it's going on a credit card. And now you're paying 24% interest on something that wasn't optional, a brake job and whatever your cat did, for the next 8 months. Ouch. So, naturally, the next question is, what income actually makes this work? The rule says rent shouldn't exceed about 30% of your gross income, not take-home, gross. So, for a $1,500 rent, you'd be making around $5,000 a month before taxes. That's about $60K a year just to make this mathematically stable. And that's not thriving, that's just not constantly stressed. If you actually want breathing room, the ability to save, invest, and not lie awake in bed at 2 a.m. doing mental math, you're realistically looking at closer to $65K, maybe even $70K. Now bring that back to reality. Most 23-year-olds aren't there. They're sitting somewhere between $38K and $45K. That's normal. That's where entry-level salaries are. So the real story here isn't can you afford $1,500 rent, it's that there's a $20,000 to $25,000 gap between where most people are and where this lifestyle actually works. That gap is the difference between stable and constantly catching up. And somehow, nobody mentions that part when they hand you the lease. So here's what a $1,500 apartment actually costs you every month. Rent, $1,500. Utilities, about $150. Internet, $60. Renter's insurance, $20. And parking, call it $75. That brings your total monthly housing cost to $1,805. And on a $40K salary, that means about 58% of your income is gone before you've even touched food, transportation, or anything resembling a life. Let that sit for a second. That's not an apartment. That's a financial trap with a nice kitchen. And if you go by the standard guideline, where rent should sit around 30% of your income, the salary that actually supports this lands closer to $60K at the absolute minimum. Realistically, if you don't want to be doing mental math every time you open your banking app, you're realistically looking more at $65K, maybe even $70K. So, no, it's not just a bit expensive, it's fundamentally misaligned with where most people are at 23. And that's why it feels the way it does. By month 3, independence feels expensive. Dinner with friends? Math first. Weekend trip? Absolutely not. New shoes? Maybe next month. Every week is a negotiation between what you need and what you can technically afford. The apartment that felt like freedom during the viewing, now it feels like a chain. That's not adulting. That's being house poor at 23. And most of Gen Z assumes it's their fault. Spoiler, it's not. The income just isn't there yet. And that's okay, because there's a smarter play. Society has convinced 23-year-olds that having roommates is embarrassing, a sign that you haven't figured life out yet, that living alone means you're an adult. Meanwhile, the solo apartment person is eating instant noodles, crying quietly over bills, and pretending it's independence. Truly living the dream. Truly. So the problem isn't you, it's the timing. Now here's the smarter play. Listen closely because this is an actual wealth-building strategy. Split a 2-bedroom with a roommate. Total monthly cost around $1,800 if you're not expecting a penthouse view or brand new hardwood floors. Your share, about $900. On a $40K salary, that's still snug but totally survivable. And here's the magic. That $900 you're no longer bleeding into solo rent, that goes straight into an emergency fund, a Roth IRA, your payday stack, money actually working for you instead of just your landlord. Over 2 years, that's potentially $5K to $10K sitting in accounts building your future, not just funding someone else's kitchen island. This isn't about discipline, it's about timing. By the time you reach a $65K salary and can afford a solo apartment comfortably, you're already financially ahead of everyone who's stretched and are still paying off their credit card. Less independent at 23, but more free at 28. Not a compromise, a strategy. That one decision lets you go from chaos, signing a lease, surviving month to month, stressing over every surprise expense, to building a system. Knowing the numbers, renting smarter, and stacking wealth while you do it.
Same start, same salary. One builds pressure, the other builds options. Next video, combining finances with a partner, because romantic and financial chaos often overlap unless someone actually shows you how to do it. If you want to be the person in your friend group who actually understands this stuff, subscribe. I put one of these out every couple days.